Chelsey Holts is the Director of Content Strategy at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And she's been through 2 campus shooter emergencies. And she's going to share her experiences helping to manage those crises as a Director of Social Media. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. I'm Jenny Li Fowler, award-winning social media professional, author, and podcast host, and a recognized voice across the social media marketing industry. Social media managers are navigating the wild, ever-changing world of higher ed communications, and I'm here to share the real stories and lessons behind the posts. Each episode explores the challenges, strategies, and untold moments that come with running social media accounts in today's digital landscape. Let's get into it. Chelsey, welcome to the podcast. I am so happy to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. The pleasure is mine. I should also say congratulations, because you got a pretty enviable promotion recently. Can you talk about that and talk about how it still plays a part in social media?
Yeah, thank you so much. So in February 2024, I started as Director of Content Strategy for Carolina. Previously, I had served as Director of Social Media for 3 years, and this role opened up, and it's exciting because I feel like I get to take a 30,000-foot view of overall content, but then I'm able to use my knowledge from working on social media to really influence the type of stories that we tell. So my role oversees the writers that manage and create content for UNC.edu, as well as the social media team. There's a new director of social media, so I work closely with them on just overall strategy and focus and how the content team can work together with them. My role is really determining what stories that we get to tell to showcase the best of Carolina and how we get to tell them. So I work really closely with the visual production and planning team in taking a story idea that might come from our writers or from social media and determine, do we need to add a visual element? Do we need to add some multimedia piece? How can we incorporate social and really create a beautiful piece of content that can live across all channels?
Yeah, it's so cool because a lot of us who are directors of social media, that's kind of a roof, right? And we don't know where to go from it. So is this content position, is it a new position that they just formed?
So there's always been a content director of some sorts. It was my supervisor when I was director of social media. But we recently restructured our department a few years ago where we split how we managed content. So that content director used to work with our photographers a little closer, videographers, and kind of managed all of the content for UNC.edu. And then there was someone else who placed all the content on UNC.edu and built what we call story experiences, which are focuses for a period of time. We decided to kind of split the paths where there's one person that focuses on all of the visual content, so photographers, videographers, and then until recently managed the creative side. And then content strategy manages the writers and the social, but I also get to lead some of the collaborations across campus and get to think through how we should be telling stories.
Right, yeah. Strategically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I love is that since you're coming from social, you can think social first for some certain types of content, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's been one of the most rewarding pieces, to be able to kind of think that way and advise, this would be a great story, but we need to add something to make it work for this platform or to make it work on social media, and really think through how we can just add more things to stories. That's been a favorite project of mine this year, in thinking through how we can take a piece of content and just add more pizzazz to it. that might not take a lot of extra execution, but it continues that story across the platforms.
Awesome. Well deserved.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
That's so great. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn because this is a serious topic, but the emergency scenario we all fear across higher education actually happened at UNC in 2023. Can you recount that day for us and give us a little background?
Yeah. So late August, students had just gotten back to campus, and it was around 1 p.m. It was around the lunchtime class change hour. Our police received a call that there was an active assailant on campus. And basically, when that happens, we have a emergency communication system called Alert Carolina. So once that call happened and police responded, we activated sirens across campus, and then that messaging tool sent out texts to every student's phone that had signed up for Alert Carolina. Parents can sign up for that. There's automatic posts that are shared on Twitter and Facebook.
So let me just kind of stop you just for a second. When you said assailant, you mean shooter, right?
Yes.
So someone had heard gunshots. Is that correct? And called the campus police?
Correct.
At this point, you just know that someone reported it. Did you know anything else? Like, did you know where or who or how many?
No. So the first message that went out was literally armed, dangerous person on or near campus. We had no idea, especially my team, when we kind of had to start activation, we had no idea where this had happened, if it was like an isolated incident or, what was happening. So it was really, the message that went out was basically, there's an armed assailant on campus, go inside now, avoid windows. And that message went out to everyone on social media, through text. There's like a website banner that gets updated. And that is kind of when social media, like our team had to activate. So sure. University communications works really closely with, we have the emergency management and planning team on campus and then the UNC police. We all have to work together in kind of crisis communication. And basically, like, we had a multi-layered focus. One was making sure like our team was safe. I personally was with my supervisor leaving lunch on our way to another meeting, and luckily we had taken our laptops, but we had to immediately run in that office, set up, and make sure students were okay, our interns were okay, that were on campus. I had other team members that were getting back to the office or on their way back to the office from lunch. And we had a whole team that was out on campus going to an event. So we had to make sure our teams were safe. And from there, we had to call into a conference line. So the way that our crisis communication tree works in university communications is our VC of communications joins this conference line with individuals from emergency management and planning, as well as a contact from UNC police. They join along with our AVCs, associate vice chancellors, and then the director of content joins, as well as the director of social media, and then our senior director of media relations.
Okay, so that's great. I mean, that's great that you are in that meeting, because I think a lot of times social media gets missed or is not asked to join. But that's that's the call in, right? This is, I think a lot of schools at this point have something like this in place where everyone calls in that that is necessary, to help advance whatever message is next, right? Yes. So from there, what happened? So that works, right? That worked according to plan. And you had a social media plan as well, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so from there, then what was said? What happened? Did it go according to plan, or what happened? Yeah.
So I'll talk first about our internal plan. So
Okay.
our team in 2021, we had created here's our just internal crisis communications plan. If something happens, here's how social would deal with it. And we had come up with this rule that there's one person that is drafting copy and posting it on social. So we have those automatic posts on Twitter and Facebook, but we don't have anything on Instagram. And we knew that that was an important tool that we needed to use. So there's always one person that's the director or the director of content. If the director of social is unable, that person is writing anything, and then we'll work on posting it across the platforms just so there's consistency and we don't have to make sure that team members are in a good place. The rest of our team is charged with monitoring social. So they're looking to see, did something post? What are people saying? Are there media members on campus that we need to alert media relations about? What are people hearing on the police scanners? Is there any incorrect information that we need to combat? They're reporting that up, and we have a separate Slack channel that we use internally to kind of field those requests. Okay. So the director, when we came up with this crisis plan, we had discussed we want to post every 15 to 30 minutes on social media just to keep that consistency. So
and this is on the flagship UNC Twitter X channel. Is that correct? Okay.
On Twitter, on Facebook, and then Instagram stories.
Okay.
We had internally committed to doing 15 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
And while we were on this call, myself and my supervisor, we are operating off of our crisis plan. So we're 15 minutes, 30 minutes, we need to get an update out. And we ran into, this was a 3 hour, maybe 3 hours or more plus lockdown.
Okay.
Where we didn't have a lot of information. There was a lot of people listening to police scanners and saying I heard it's at this building on Central Campus. I'm on South Campus, so I don't need to worry about this. The suspect was on foot. So what we did find out was this was an isolated incident. It was a shooting at the lab towards a specific individual. That person, the shooter, fled after. But we didn't know that, and that wasn't public knowledge to share.
Okay. So you had that information, but at this point, it wasn't shared publicly. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there's a lot of people that had misinformation because they're listening to other things. So they thought that's when you had the person say, it's on this side of campus, I'm on the other side of campus. So, okay. But that was not true. So you had a lot of false information flying. Is that sort of?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
There was a lot of things. And this is where I'm grateful that social did have a place at the table, because we were able to give that information to our team internally, our ADCs and our VC, and say, this is what's happening. We have committed to have an update every 30 minutes. Is there anything that we can share? And we had to work with the emergency teams in, if there's not a new update, is there something that we can share on social just to keep people calm?
Did you also share with them, look, people are getting misinformation, so can we release where the shooting happened? Were you able to sort of give them that feedback?
We were able to give that feedback, and we were able to get some of the future Alert Carolina messages to have a little bit more specific information. There was also a post that went out with identification of a suspect. So people kind of knew what they were looking for and what was happening. And I think part of that was monitoring on social media. I think part of that was also we had a very early media presence on the ground.
Of course.
But being able to feed that information, we were able to kind of inform what potential Alert Carolina messages could look like, and even getting some of those to happen a little bit more actively. So we were able to push for, more frequent updates. And then we were able to, in that time, get them to approve, okay, we don't have a new update at this time. We could come up with some boilerplate text for people to remain in a safe place and just send that out.
So you have information. Your team had committed to posting 15 to 30 minutes, but then you realized the actual information had to come from like the police or the emergency team. Is that right? But they weren't always willing to share things every 15 to 30 minutes. It sounds like there was an inconsistency in your plan and what you were actually realized what you could do in the moment. Is that right?
Yes, we very quickly realized that we were operating kind of off of two plans. Like we had our internal communications focus and social focus plan, and then there was the emergency management plan. And there was a little bit of tension, like from the emergency side, like it doesn't make sense for them to share updates if there are none. They're like, there's nothing new for us to share.
Right.
We don't need to push an update, and we're advocating for additional communication. So we were on that call able to work with them during the lockdown of, I'm going to create some boilerplate text. This is the same update that we've pushed 15 minutes ago. I'm just going to say no new updates. Here, let's push this out. And they were able to say, that's fine.
And just like hunker
that's
down
fine.
in place. But did you find, because in the meantime, parents, right? I mean, or people are just going to say, they're not telling us any, whoever they are, is they're not telling us anything. We're not getting any new information. Why aren't you telling, that's probably very loud, right? And they're using all of the channels that they can to do that.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things was we were doing this for social. We were sharing updates every 15 to 30 minutes. There weren't text updates every 15 to 30 minutes. We ran into that, our emergency team, for a period until we knew where we could see that the suspect was no longer a threat. They didn't want to push text updates because we had students on lockdown in buildings. And there's some buildings on campus that you can walk in. There might be doors that are locked on the inside, but there might be some access that someone could get into. So we had a lot of students on lockdown, and we didn't want cell phones to go off. So we were doing 15 to 30 minutes on social, but then social might not be where students are expecting those updates, where parents are.
Okay, you just brought up a whole bunch of things. Okay, can we unpack some stuff here? So it sounds like you went ahead and did updates on social every 15 to 30 minutes because probably in these situations, over communicating is better than not communicating, right? Even if it's to say there's no new information. Is that what you discovered? Okay.
Yes.
But then the text messages, the emergency text messages, you weren't sending text messages at the same time, or the same messages that you were tweeting or posting, because, and this isn't something I've never thought of before, Chelsey, if a shooter is near a person in a building and that person is trying to stay quiet and their cell phone goes off, that is something to consider.
Yeah, that brings up a debate that we had. There was another incident a few weeks after this that brought up a debate. Do we ask individuals on campus to silence their phones in that first message?
Yeah.
And that's been something that we've been kind of grappling with as we're reworking our university-wide communications plan. Because, that was something that we had never thought of. And it took us monitoring on social media. We were seeing parents saying, my student is terrified in a lockdown where they're taking a class, and they're not going to check Twitter. They're not going to be refreshing Twitter. I know we direct them to, but when a crisis like this happens, that's not where you immediately think to turn.
That's so interesting because you and I probably, the first place I check is Twitter.
Yeah.
X, so, but not everyone thinks that. So with the debate, circling back to the bit debate, because that is, I'd never considered that. It's like if your phone goes off and you're trying to be quiet, where did you land with that debate?
So where we landed was we actually adopted a run, hide, fight kind of aspect to our emergency communications. And that's something that we're starting to launch. And last year we started a lot of the communications efforts around that, but that is really educating people around what that means. So we built out a lot of make sure you are silencing your phones if you need to hide. Make sure you're getting away from windows. So that first message that I mentioned that went out at first, it said, go inside now, avoid windows.
Okay.
But it seemed very vague to students. They were unsure what was considered a safe place. So we've worked to kind of institute a lot more education on if you cannot get inside, you need to run away from the threat. You need to run to a safe place, hide, fight if you must, and really educate around that. So while we don't say silence your phones, it's really educating people to make the smartest decision that they can wherever they are.
Yeah, at their current situation, right? Because I imagine there really isn't one solution, right, to every situation. So, gosh, that's pretty. So, is that a priority about what is hide, run, fight? Is that something that messaging that you share all year round now?
Yeah. So, starting last year, based on the shooting and the incident that happened shortly after, we had another incident where an individual came on campus with a gun. It was a very isolated incident. No one was harmed, but it was 2 weeks after this shooting. We took a look at how we were communicating with Alert Carolina, how often we were sending messages based on basically the concerns from our team that we needed to be communicating more. And we need to consider how we're communicating, what platforms we're communicating on. And we built a full communications plan to start to switch to run, hide, fight. And that was composed of a few educational videos. We're working on one that really goes into depth on what each piece means. But we've done a few of those. We've done some opportunities for our emergency management team to talk about why these changes were important, because obviously we got a lot of feedback from this incident.
Did you make those changes in the 2 weeks between the two incidents, or after the second one?
We made some changes. We adopted run, hide, fight after both incidents.
After both. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What were some of the things that you did that you sort of learned from the first incident that you changed and did differently in the second incident that worked well?
One was really committing for social to continue that 15 to 30 minute interval of communication. We had a lot of those approved messages that we got approved from police chief, emergency management, and planning team that we felt comfortable sending out at that frequency. We added a new platform. I won't say we switched. So this was also the time that Twitter was in its first transition and things.
So it had become X, and it was
different. It was a little, people were not super a fan of the platform. People were moving to Threads. So someone actually commented through our coverage and said, these need to also be pushed out on Threads. You have a big group of your audience that has moved there. So we adopted Threads, doing the same type of updates. We also started time stamping. That was a decision that we made during the shooting and then also in the second incident. So we realized that it can seem like a lot on Instagram stories to click through without, there's a little timestamp at the top that says 2 hours ago. but we added a more visible timestamp that this is the time that we posted it so that people could actually also see how regular that we were with those updates.
So when you say you're timestamping, you're literally just putting the time in the post. Is that right?
Yeah. So we're putting the time on, we did it on Facebook. I don't know if we did it on Twitter because the time is there, but then we also did it on Instagram.
Okay.
And then we also did something the second time around that we updated our Facebook with the all clear. So all of our Facebook posts, if people were to stumble upon some of the initial posts, we would say update at 4 p.m., all clear issued, even if it was like on the original 1 p.m. post, because we saw a lot of people from the shooting, the first one, people were still commenting on it hours later after it had been resolved because it was being pushed into their algorithm.
Right.
So we're like,
and they were thinking it's happening in the moment, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's super smart to add the time in the posts. And when you said that you had, messaging ready that was approved, are they boilerplates ready, or were you creating messaging that emergency, the police department or the emergency management side were more apt to, review more quickly, or were they just already ready to go? Like you have some now ready to go if something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were based off of language from that shooting that we had gotten approved from them that basically said no new changes, stay in place, continue to check Alert Carolina. And we now have that added in our crisis comms plan so that if there isn't a new update, this has already been approved by that emergency management team.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked for approval for if there's no new update in 30 minutes in any situation, can we continue to push these out?
Okay.
And
it's
they
fine.
Said, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no new, information, you have the go ahead to just to post that there's no new information without having to ask for approval at that moment.
Yes. So one thing on those conference calls that we do, the director of social media does need to report up and say, hey, it's 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and use the boilerplate. This is what it says as a reminder. We'll refresh them and we'll, of course, make sure our VC is good. There might be some instances where the emergency team is like, actually, I have an update. It should go live in the next 5 minutes. Can you wait? Okay. And then we might say, all right, we'll wait if there's a new update. But if not, we'll push this through. And then they might say that's fine. But that conference call is for us to continually remind them 30 minutes, we have this approved text, we're pushing it, but then they don't have to review it in the moment.
Okay. So, oh my gosh, so you have the first incident and then you have the second incident 2 weeks later. Were you thinking, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
When that happened? Yeah.
Yes. And it was a very different one. I was not with my boss, who was maybe my security blanket. I was out, and it was actually right before the sirens went off. I was walking back from lunch. It again happened around lunch. And I just saw students running, and someone said they're reporting a shooter at the union. So I immediately texted my boss and our AVC, who is also our emergency management point of contact, and said, this is what I'm seeing. I am going to go back where I was, make sure that they're secure, call into this line. And then that is when the sirens went off. So it was just one of those things I cannot believe it's happening. And it was a very different scenario. There were a lot. I mean, it was also, again, class change time. There was a lot of people milling
not in buildings. Okay. Yeah. And everyone's thinking this cannot be happening. Are you kidding me? This,
right.
Then what are the chances? Okay. So, wow. But then you had learned some lessons. So it probably felt like you had practice or was it, did it feel just as crazy?
It definitely, I hate to say that it did feel like we had practice. But it was one of those things that it was terrible. I had new team members. I had a team member who started literally the week before the first shooting, and then this is the second incident. And to make sure that she was okay, make sure that the rest of my team was okay. And I was in a different space. Like the first day I was with a lot of university, like communications staff, different vibe. I am in all with students. I am in a space with students and faculty calling into this line. But I do feel that the first time being able to like advocate for posting on social and knowing what to do and having those pre-approved scripts almost did help it, I think, execute a little bit better because we knew we're going to do 30 minutes. I think the team, even though you hate for them to have that experience of monitoring, they had just done that level of monitoring. They knew what to look for. But it was definitely a very like surreal experience of this is happening again and not knowing what was happening, really.
Okay, so actually, so before I ask you the lessons learned after the second, I just want to do a wellness check. So did you have sort of like a debrief, or did you have like with your team? Like, how did you handle that situation after the second shooter incident?
I'm really grateful because our like UCOM team did a lot of wellness checks on especially everyone who played a part in communication, but just everyone in our office provided resources for us, let us, take some time off. And I did a lot of like check-ins with my team to make sure that they were good and they were supported. Also giving them a break. Like monitoring is such a heavy role, like outside of a crisis, but seeing all of that in a crisis and really, if you're an empath, like the stress and the anxiety and the emotions that people are feeling, it's hard to like see all of that on a screen. So making sure that they were taking time off, taking things off their plate, giving them breaks. We did a lot of like, okay, you take turns, you take a break from monitoring, I'll take it up. Like if you can work on this report or like go home early, come in late. But thankfully, like our team really prioritizes that.
Okay. That's so in your assessment, do you feel like you all took care of each other? Everyone got the time that they needed? Everyone's doing okay?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Amazing. I'm glad that y'all, it's really lovely to hear that you made that a priority. And what I advocate for all the time too is that you are a director that said, look, let me take on the monitoring. I'm always telling people who or social media managers to ask their supervisors if they would be willing to take on the monitoring for an hour. So kudos to you that you did that. So I think that's amazing. Yeah. So what were the lessons learned, Chelsey? What is the recommendations and the advice that you would give us? Like I definitely heard over communicate, right? The 30-minute, every 15, 30 minutes seems to have worked for you all, and time stamping, like put the time in all of the posts because the algorithm does do weird things to when people see content. And so you can that really helps people know exactly what time things did occur. But what were some of the other lessons learned from the incidents?
I think really one, establishing one person, having the one person like in charge of creating the post and then pushing it and then getting it approved. I think that's good. So it saves time. There's not a lot of, I need to go to this person to get this tweak done for Instagram and for Twitter. And I also think having that plan ready, I think that was something that we made in 2021 and we're like, we'll never have to use this. And it was something that I onboarded my team and made sure that everyone knew when they started, here's our crisis plan. We've never had to use this, but also that frequent education of like, we haven't had to break this out yet, but here's what crisis looks like so that everyone was prepared. I go back to like our newer team member yeah, it was her first week. But she already knew where to find the crisis plan. We wound up like, she didn't have to do a lot of monitoring because we wanted to make sure she was in a safe place. But like, when that second incident came around, she was able to step in and like knew what to do. I also think advocating, if social media directors are able to join those calls, advocating for that, because I do think that a lot of the changes that we made, even in our future, like communications, like this run, hide, fight, and really considering that language, was because we were able to report so much on what we were seeing on social and really advocating and knowing what social looks like, knowing that algorithms can change, knowing that people have left a platform, that we need to add a new platform. That was really instrumental, because had there not been a social media person on that call, we might not have made the switch to Instagram Threads. We might not have made the point of silencing phones, really making sure that there's someone there that understands social, or even if it's joining for like a short time and maybe working with a point of contact, but really making sure that there's a presence there that understands and can advocate for social. I think now, especially when we've been thinking of our university-wide communications plan, that's been a big piece. Our social director is in the room along with our AVC, myself, our point of contact for emergency planning, and we're able to ask those questions. We've brought up things like, what platforms do we need to consider now that so many more people have left X? What are the capabilities with our Alert Carolina tool to adopt to new platforms? Okay, if we have to stay on X, how are we going to add in additional communication points to maybe move people to text if so many people are leaving that platform? There's been a lot of conversations that I think might have been not addressed, or addressed maybe in the moment of a crisis, that we've been able to kind of work through in this, not recovery, but kind of learning time from all of the findings.
Yeah. And basically one person was drafting the post, but it was the same. I imagine it was the same language, right?
Yeah.
It's one post and you put it up on all of the social media channels that you choose. But it's just important for one person to be writing it and one person on the emergency management side to have to look at it. That's what's helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm just stressed, like, listening to you talk about it. I mean, it's such, I mean, we all dread it, and kudos to you and your team, for handling this twice and actually being able to learn from the first to make improvements, even, 2 weeks later when you had the second one. So, I mean, it just sounds like, have a plan. And I think we do all have plans, but make sure everybody knows about it, right? Like, dust it off and practice it. It sounds like that's really, really vital.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, like, in having a backup, because if I was out or if someone else was out, making sure that someone else is fully equipped to act upon it. And one thing I didn't mention, but another thing is, I feel like there's the crisis plan for the actual incident, and then there's the plan for after. Like, what is your plan after a crisis happens in continuing that same level of consistent communication and caring for your audience? That was something that I think we also had to really learn in the moment of, what do we do after this horrific shooting happened on campus? We can't immediately post. It was like prime back to school time. We were posting like move in, and first years are so excited. We can't post that immediately after. So we had to have, I think, a week and some change of downtime. Here are resources. Here are our mental health. Here's a mental health toolkit. And we also had to equip other departments around campus. We had to make sure that they were aware of our crisis plan and that they were also being mindful of not posting something after this incident that could be seen not in good taste.
It is tone deaf, and yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Chelsey, I feel like I might handle a situation like that a little better after our conversation, although, we all hope that we never have to. I do have one last question for you, Chelsey. What is your confession?
Oh, I've been thinking about this, and I'm like, should I do my hot take and like just a normal, like a regular take?
Yeah, go for it.
I feel like my hot take is I just really miss Twitter. Like, I love Twitter so much, and I am still in this habit of like, I need to keep it for work and I can't let go of it, but it's so terrible. And my confession is just I find myself refreshing and I'm always like, what am I looking at? What is this? Yeah. But I keep going back. I think I'm in like a toxic relationship.
No, Chelsey, you're not alone. You're not alone. I still love Twitter or miss Twitter. I still on X. I will also be on that ship until wherever it takes me. So you're not alone. And I appreciate that. And I will start following you on X.
Yeah. I feel like I don't post enough.
No, because I will be on there with you. You're not alone in feeling that way. So I thank you for sharing your hot take. And Chelsey, you were a wealth of knowledge, great actionable tips and insights. And really thank you for sharing, what you and your team went through so we can all learn from it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I learned so much from your podcast. So I'm glad to be here and happy to share what we've learned.
Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.